You guys can make some noise here. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you very much. Welcome to Campus Conversation. So glad to have all of you guys here with us in the room and all of you with us streaming live here over the magic of that internet, right? We have a terrific guest as we continue our Campus Conversation series here today. A guy who is so accomplished in his field that only 7 people have held his title before him. He is the commissioner of the LPGA. Please welcome Mike Whan. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Over here?
Have a seat, yes. It's for you if you need it too.
All right.
Okay. Let's get down to brass tacks right away.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
Wow.
Hard hitting here.
It's like a regular press conference for me.
So tell me, maybe 25, 50 words or less, the state of the LPGA today.
If you knew me, the hardest part of that question was the 25 words or less. But global, truly global, certainly rising, borderless, and young. So if I take all those pieces, we have players on our tour from 32 different countries. We have 170 countries watch us every time we tee it up. We've gone from a business that was about 70% smaller than 5 years ago to where it is today. And the average winner on tour is about 24 years old. So I have players from 17 to 52, but used to be in your 30s, you played your best golf. We're starting to see 20 to 25 is prime time. So it's a different tour than it was 20 years ago when it was primarily a U.S. tour, played in the U.S., watched by one country. It's completely different 15, 20 years later.
You know, there are so many threads to take from that and lots of avenues I'd like to pursue, and I'm sure that our students would like to pursue as well. But before we get into all of that and into all of LPGA business, I'd like for them to know a little bit about you and your background. And how, I'm sure like them, all these guys out here, you were a sports fan.
Yeah, I was a sports,
tell me how
sports
that
fan.
developed.
I was an athlete, small A. I mean, if my players heard me call myself an athlete, they'd probably disagree. But I went to school to play football. I was a walk-on quarterback who lasted 3 weeks. And when I stopped playing, I saw a depth chart, and I was 17th on the quarterback depth chart. I thought if I could just go to school for 27 years, I might see the field. And so I stopped playing football, and it was the first moment in my life where I didn't really know what I was going to do next. I always just figured I'd keep playing football. And I started in communications, which most of you probably think based on my job is where I finished, but transferred out of that and became an econ and finance major. Not exactly sure why. I'm not sure I've ever done anything in my life either related to econ or finance. And when I got out of school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I always say that the hardest question in any interview for me is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because I don't see myself in 5 years. I really, I don't like building a plan, because I think if you build a plan, you tend to say no to detours because you think that's where I got to be in 20 years. And I've seen a lot of my college friends know where they wanted to be in 25 years, and by gosh, they're going to get there. And as a result, there's no detours. And the detours is where the learning curves are the steepest. So I got out of school, went to Procter & Gamble, and I ran the Crest toothpaste brand for 8 years. Finally decided to leave and get in the golf business, became the vice president of golf for Wilson Sporting Goods, was fired in my second year. My wife was pregnant with our second. I came home and said, guess what? I'm unemployed and have no income. And then we flew to I was in Chicago, flew to California, and I was a Midwestern kid born in Chicago, and I thought California was where everything bad happened, you know, gangs, and the state catches on fire like every 3 years, and then when it's not on fire, there's mudslides, and we thought, you know, nothing is good in California. And I went out there and interviewed with a company called TaylorMade Golf and became their head of marketing, then became marketing and sales. Then we got bought by Adidas. I became the head of North America. Left that because I thought the learning curve was too, thin. I became the CEO of a hockey equipment company, sold that in 2008, came home, and you could start to see about my relationship. Came home and said to my wife, guess what? I'm unemployed again. We just sold the business, and I said, I'll make you 3 promises. I know she loves California, so I promise we'll never leave California. See how well that went. I promise I won't go into an airport for 12 months because we had a company in Montreal and a company in Orange County, and I was going back and forth every week. And I promise whatever I do next, because I love you, I won't travel as much as I used to. And we play in 16 countries and 23 states, so you can imagine how well that's going. So be careful of plans is all I'd tell you. So I don't tell anybody where I see myself in 5 years because I've never been right.
You know, I didn't realize that about you when we booked this. Otherwise, I would have had a backup plan. But fortunately, you fulfilled that promise.
Yeah, as you can see, I worry every time I come home that my wife and kids might have packed up and left because I have a lot of failed promises along the way.
So your first job was not in sports, right? I mean, it was just in marketing / advertising. Was there a moment where you realized before you went to work for Wilson, where you realized, or TaylorMade, where you realized, I really need to be around sports. That has to be a part of my mission.
It's an interesting story. You guys will edit this if you find it isn't, but in my life, it's an interesting story because I was at Procter & Gamble. I was 28 years old, and a former Procter & Gamble guy had started a startup company. And this was, when startup companies were still a fairly new idea. And he'd made it. He'd hit it. And he was in Tampa, Florida, actually, and he flew me down, and he offered me a job as the vice president of sales and marketing. I'm 28, but that's what you do with startups. Right. Everybody gets titles and no money. So I'm thinking, 28, VP of sales and marketing. It's pretty cool. He was going to give me a car, which I thought was unbelievable, somebody to give you a car. Had a signing bonus, which I thought only athletes got. And as you can see, I wasn't an athlete. I lasted 3 weeks in college. So I came home and I told my wife, guess what? We're going to live in Tampa, and I'm going to, got a signing bonus. And as we're having dinner, and I'm telling her all about this great new thing, I'll never forget, my wife said to me, I'm disappointed in you. And I said, disappointed? Didn't I tell you I'm going to be a VP of sales and marketing? She goes, you've talked for 40 minutes, and all you've talked about is your title and the money and the car. I don't even know what the job is. I don't even know what you'll do for a living. I don't know what the product is. And I remember thinking to myself, my initial answer was going to be, who cares, right? I mean, I'm a VP of sales and marketing, got a signing bonus. And I realized, shame on me. I should care. And her disappointment was right. And I started getting uncomfortable and sweaty, and I knew she was right. Anyway, I turned that job down, and the recruiter that was trying to land me on that job flew in town. I lived in Cincinnati at the time, flew into Cincinnati to take me to dinner to talk me out of it and take this job in Tampa. And in the process of him trying to talk me out of it, I got more ingrained that I'm not leaving P&G for something that's just a job. I want to do something I love and I care about. And he started asking me things about, what do you love? What do you do when you're not at work? What did you do when you were a kid to have peace? And I was a caddy. I cut greens and fairways all the way through college. Golf was my peace. It's where I was comfortable and enjoyed. And I didn't care if I was raking a bunker or shooting a ball over it. And right then I said to myself, I don't know when I'll leave this job, but I'm not going to leave this job unless I can put my passions together. And that's what ended up getting me to Wilson in the golf business and then the TaylorMade. I knew I wanted to be in the golf business.
So you did take a brief detour to a hockey equipment company.
I did, yeah.
And hockey players tend to be good at golf. But
they'll think they're good at golf.
Yeah.
So I came back from a board meeting. Adidas is a German-based company. I came back from a German board meeting and said to my wife, the German CEO just looked at me and said, Mike, we want you to grow at high single digits. We're growing too fast. We want controlled growth, public company. And I thought, that feels like the owner just told the head coach to make the playoffs, but don't really shoot for the Super Bowl. And I have patience. I mean, I was given a lot of skills at birth, but patience was not one of them. And so when somebody tells me controlled growth, I think that's a great job for somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I want to grow 100% every year, and if I can't, let somebody else control the growth. And so I said to my wife, I think I'm kind of done here. I mean, we'd had an unbelievable. I joined TaylorMade at $75 million. I left it at $880 million. I thought, you'll never have another run like this. Now, they're currently $2 billion, so I missed that by over 100%. But and I met a guy who owned an NHL franchise. This is kind of off the business story, but I was raised in the church and religious, but I'd gotten completely away from it. This guy was a born-again Christian, and when we met for dinner, the first thing he did is hugged me. Hadn't hugged another man in quite a while. We had a long dinner, but before dinner, he reached out and grabbed my two hands with his two hands and said, okay, if we pray first. And he prayed and said, God, I know there's no such thing as just circumstantial meeting. We're together tonight for a reason. Help guide us and teach me why Mike is entering my life. And I thought, I'm in your life because you invited me to dinner. But at the end of dinner, he told me all about this hockey equipment business that was losing money, and he didn't really want to let everybody go. He really should close the company. And he said, would you come and either help me close the company humanely or fix it? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I like the job I have now. And at the end of dinner, he hugged me again, and in my ear, he whispered, I need you. I think we could be good for each other. I mean, it felt like a soap opera, right? Trust me, the guy was 70 and he wasn't making a move. But, and I remember saying to my wife, I've never had another person say, I need you in business, even when they need you in business. And I just thought this was a guy I was going to learn a lot from. Hindsight, looking back, I got really connected to the church through him. We had a son who at the time had some pretty severe learning disabilities. And when you have a child that you can't, I'm a control freak. I like to know where the future is. And when you have a situation where you can't control it, this guy brought me to something that found peace. And so I go down and talk to his men's fellowship group in Naples every year now. So anyway, I joined that business. We turned it around, and that's what we sold in 2008 was his hockey company.
What's interesting in the threads that you've provided for us in a couple of different areas is there are certain things that tapped into your identity, right? I mean, sort of your heartbeat there.
Yeah, I think, so when I do these fellowship speeches with other sort of Christians, or as I would say, a Christian in training, which I am, I talk about life moments where you get a knock on the door, and it isn't to make this a religious talk, but there's going to be times in your lives as you guys grow up where you're going to get a knock at the door, and your question is whether or not you're going to open it or just decide you already have the answers. And that's what I was saying before. The best part of my career is how messed up it's been. You know, that there's not a straight line. When I was in school, if somebody said, who wants to be commissioner, I would have not only not raised my hands, I wouldn't even taken the course. I'm certain I wouldn't have passed it. And because I just didn't know what a commissioner was. I mean, what do I want to be a commissioner? I wanted to run a business, and commissioner sounds like, you know, somebody who's deciding, you know, what the rules of the sport are. And but the good news is, by not having a real plan, and really, as my father used to always say, take any job that opens more doors when you're done doing it. And that's what I've kind of made a career out of. And to me, as I've gotten older, two things are definitely true to me. Is I've learned how important it is, the relationship you have with the person you directly report to. Like it or not, that affects your happiness. And I'm a guy who makes a lot of mistakes. I've been my whole life. I will be the rest of my life. So I need to find people that actually enjoy that. And it's hard to find people who actually say, you'd be great for our business, Mike, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes here. But I think if you want to shoot big, I think if you don't like the status quo, I think if you want to talk about doubling your business, not growing 5%, then you've got to be willing to make a ton of mistakes. I always say to players, you know, why does Tiger Woods rebuild his swing every 5 years? Because he wants to be better. And the only way to be better is he has to get worse for a while. Businesses are the same. They just don't like to say it out loud. Golfers are honest. They say it. I got to get longer off the tee, and as a result, I'm going to hit the gym. My swing's going to get messed up. I'm going to get off the leaderboard for a couple years, but I'll be back. Businesses do the same thing. They just don't announce it on TV. And so we make a lot of mistakes, and luckily I found a group that's okay with that.
So what is it about that, the ability to make mistakes, particularly in golf, and obviously you've been connected to golf professionally at several points throughout your career. Why do you think that speaks to you? Why do you think that those challenges, as opposed to other sports business challenges, are particularly interesting to you?
I don't know if this is Mike Whan specific. I think a lot of people feel this way. But if I'm going to, I always say to my boards that I've worked for, if I'm going to stay here another 3 years, we're going to have to put something down that we all think was worth it. You know, so where do we want to be in 3 years from now that I can actually look back and go, you know, I worked way too many hours. I was on way too many planes. I took way too many red eyes and slept away from my house way too many nights. But what we did matters. And that's probably what's brought me back to sport, which is, I always say to people, if you're not golfers, you probably go commissioner of the LPGA, who cares? And I'm cool with that. If you are a golfer, what you'd say is, hey, the LPGA is one of the longest, most successful women's sports organization in the world. If when you grow up, if you have daughters, I can tell you, I have 3 sons. They can turn on TV 24/7 and watch their sports heroes. You can catch LeBron or Peyton Manning or Tiger Woods, whatever sport hero you have as a young boy, you can watch. If you want to watch female sports heroes, you pretty much have the Olympics, an occasional WNBA game, and the LPGA. And so when I got to the NBA, when I got to the LPGA, we had about 200 hours of television, and 60% of it was tape delayed. And there's nothing more enjoyable than watching sports when it happened 5 hours ago. So today we have over 400 hours with 95% of it live. And what we're trying to do is make sure that daughters in the world, if they want to watch a sports hero, if they want to watch Michelle Wie, she's on TV, and she's on TV 4 days a week, every week. If they want to watch Paula Cream or Inbee Park, and if you're from Malaysia, Australia, Taiwan, or Toledo, you can find a hero that kind of came from the same background you did. And as a father of 3 boys, we take that for granted. If I had 3 girls, it would be frustrating to me that there's not more options. So I believe what we're doing matters, because I think it's going to make a real difference for young girls, not only in the U.S., but all around the world.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters, and they never watch sports, which is a failing on my part as a father, I think. Except
Mine
we did
too,
watch. We watched the U.S. Women's Amateur.
Good.
For a lot of different reasons. Going back to what you just said there, though, too, about when you took over and the state of media, I think for the LPGA back in 2010, there were media members from the traditional press that looked at the LPGA as sort of a damaged product. Yeah. Is that a fair assessment at the time? And what did you find attractive about the idea that you were going into an organization that maybe needed some realignment?
It's definitely a fair comment. I mean, we had gone from having 30 events to 22 events. We were going global. And I always tell people that when you talk about a business going global, that makes for a great PowerPoint presentation. You know, we're going to go to all these new countries, we're going to sell product, we're going to have fans of our brand all around the world. But I always tell people going global is like going through a tunnel to get to the other side. The first part of the tunnel is dark. And your natural inclination is go back. I can't see forward. You're kind of reaching out. And going global with a brand's the same way. The first couple years, man, it's dark. And a lot of people, even people you trust, are saying, go back. It was better back in the 80s with the LPGA when everybody was from one country and just one country watched you and they drove to tournaments. And wasn't it just a better time? And you can't go back. The world's changed. And you're either global or you're out of business in the sport business for the most part. And they were in the middle of going global. I have taken 5 or 6 brands global. So when they talked to me about all the problems they were having, I thought, you know, you're just early in the tunnel. You just got to keep going, but don't let the darkness scare you. The reality is I'm a junkie for damaged goods. I mean, I hate to say that out loud and now let students all around the country watch it. But every business I've gone to is in bad shape when I went. And I'll tell you, the number one reason I'm a freak for that is when a business is in bad shape, and the owners know it, the pushback against change and new ideas will never be lower. So if I was going to become a head coach in football tomorrow, my son will hate this because he's a Raider fan, I'd join the Raiders. Because the Raiders are saying, we've tried everything, whatever you want to do, let's go give it a shot. And when I joined the LPGA, they were striving, they were thirsting for new ideas. They were okay with the fact I was going to make a lot of changes. And I think to me, that is incredibly uplifting. You know, joining a place where somebody says, let me tell you how we do things here. You know, I don't know if I could go work at Nike because the first thing I do is probably go to, you know, a month-long Nike college, which is, here's how we do it at Nike. And if you already know how you do it, don't hire me, you know, because I don't want to do it how you did it. I want to take it to another level. Some companies want nothing to do with that guy. Some companies do. So my job is to find the ones who want that guy.
You know, it's an interesting juxtaposition to where you're entering as we talk about some of those as opposed to where our students enter. Because I think when you're entering at the entry level of an industry, you know, there's an attraction to those names that have more stability. There's Nike, there's WWE, there's ESPN. For people who are coming in at the beginning, there may still, though, be those kinds of great opportunities, maybe where you can do a little bit more in companies that have a little less glamour in their name or a little less stability in their business. What is your personal matrix? I mean, you've alluded to it a little bit for looking at those kinds of opportunities. And what would your counsel be for the students who are just getting into the industry?
Well, if I'm being totally honest, my perspective on that has changed dramatically from 20 to 50, you know, in terms of years of age. You know, when I was 20, I went to Procter & Gamble because I thought it was safe, right? It was a good place to start, and everybody respected P&G. It was a Fortune 12 company, and I figured no matter where I go after that, people will still respect P&G. Today, I'm 100%, I always call it leash. If I'm going to ever change jobs, it's all going to be about leash. How much leash are they going to let me run in the backyard? Because I really don't want to go on a walk where I'm getting pulled back all the time. So if you want to hire me, give me leash. Let me run a little bit. Let me strangle myself on occasion. And I think if I could be 20 or 25 or 30 again, I would focus more on leash than I would on name brand. The one thing I would tell anybody, tell all of our interns, I tell all of our initial hires at the LPGA is stop worrying so much about where you see yourself at 45. Because wherever you see yourself at 45 is likely not going to happen. If you end up getting where you think you're going to be at 45, you'll be the 1 in 100 that actually executes that. Life doesn't work that way. And the good news is, I promise you, your 45 outcome is cooler than you're thinking today if you just let it happen. You know, I always say that my kids water ski, and it took them a long time to get outside the wake, you know, because the wake's safe, you know. But once you cross over a couple times outside the wake and you see it's a little scary out there, and that's where all the fun is, you just keep going out there. And each time you go out there a little farther, and then you go out there and you take a wipe out and you think, I didn't die, you know, I mean, to pop back up and you go again. I think life's the same way. You'll tend to stay in the wake longer than you needed to. And so I would just say, as soon as you feel like something's a little uncomfortable, like, geez, I don't know, that could end badly, I would tell you in 15 years, you're going to love that feeling. So the quicker you can get comfortable with that feeling, the more you're going to enjoy the ride. I mean, to me today, I want nothing but outside the wake. But I tell you, when I was 22, I was looking for soft, smooth water. And I wish I could have gotten out of the wake faster, because it's all been great since then.
I think most of these guys out there will be thinking, 45, oh my God, I can't even imagine myself at all at 45. That's so old.
Oh, geez, come on. 45 is the new 20.
That's right. We're both telling each other that's for sure. Talking about media and the evolution you've had over the past 5 or 6 years, you've doubled the number of hours, you've increased to multiples the number of live events. You've also have some new media partners. Who are the key media partners now, and in what ways are you looking at future media opportunities for the LPGA?
Well, so in a couple of those questions, our core media partner is the Golf Channel.
Right.
The Golf Channel produces 80% of our golf tournaments. When we play in Asia, we use IMG Media TV to produce our events. The important part for us, for a media partner, was somebody who's going to produce quality enough television that we could sell it around the world. I would say if you looked at golf business 20 years ago, primarily us, the PGA Tour, et cetera, we were putting on golf tournaments with the hope of making money running golf tournaments. And that's and you guys do a lot with WWE. I mean, you can make money on an individual event, but that's a hard way to make real money long term. What you really need to do is create something interesting enough that somebody in Taiwan wants to watch it. Right. Something interesting enough that you can sell to India. And so for us, we produce television. And quite frankly, we don't really care how much money we lose on the production. We don't care how much money we lose on the event, because our money is made in selling that to 170 other countries. And every time we add an event, we're about to announce another event next week. When we add that event, we'll sell an incremental event to 170 countries. And our money now is, we're really a TV production business. And we used to be 20 years ago a golf tournament business. And really, in my time at the LPGA, it was teaching both our players, meaning our athletes, our members, and our board that. Because sometimes when you've been something for 20 years, you wake up and you don't even realize you're something else. And it's like social media. Try to explain social media to a 50-year-old, you're going to be spending a long time. Explain it to a 15-year-old, they're already ahead of you. We're already a media company. And once we understood that, we all became about, let's get events. Who cares if we lose money? Let's get more TV, production. Let's not worry about whether or not that production costs us money, as long as it's quality to sell. So yeah, we're all about producing events that the world wants to watch. I always say we follow a real simple model, which is the Olympics. And I'm not trying to suggest the LPGA is the Olympics, I get that. But the Olympics follows the model of build an event that's so compelling that the best athletes in the prime of their athletic career want to come and compete against each other to find out who's the best. Create an incredible hometown event for that event, and let the world watch. And that's what the LPGA is. I mean, if you're a young golfer, no matter what tour you play on around the world, your goal is to make it here. Because here, the best 50 players in the world play against each other every week. And if you want to ever be considered the #1 player in the Rolex World Rankings, you're going to have to play in the LPGA. We put on cool events, whether, next week we'll be in Evian, France, after that we'll be in Heidelberg, Germany, and after that we'll be in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Those are cool events where we are, but 170 countries watch us. So we didn't make up this formula. We're just kind of stealing an old idea from the Olympics.
As you look internationally, there's so many media questions to come back to too, but how has that impacted the tour? I mean, what are the opportunities that have availed themselves because you have been so aggressive about pursuing opportunities overseas?
Well, like I said, going into the tunnel, it sounds great on the other side of going global, and we're kind of on the other side of the tunnel now, but if you went back in the last 3 or 4 years of our transition, we had players coming in from all different countries. A lot of them didn't speak English. A lot of the American players didn't speak Japanese or Korean or what was going on. We started playing in all these different countries, and all of a sudden, you walk onto the first tee in Korea, and there's 45,000 people, tightly packed within you, all taking your picture, and you're not used to that here. And what's happened as a result, one of the things we did is we partnered with a language company that traveled with us for 5 years. And we had anywhere from 50 to 70 athletes at any one time taking individual language lessons. And it's not just Koreans learning English or Japanese players learning Korean. Everybody was learning everything else. If you're a player born in Texas and you can walk into a business meeting in Japan and say 5 phrases in Japan, that company's logo is going to be on your bag and they're going to be writing you a check. And if you can, do an interview on Japanese TV in Tokyo after a round, our TV is worth more money. So we spend a lot of time, especially with our rookies, in what we call, submersion training, which is what's it like to sign an autograph in Australia? How's that different than signing an autograph in Germany? How's that different from signing an autograph in Seattle? How do you say thank you? Where's the first tee? I mean, should you sign a golf ball and give it to a volunteer in Taiwan? And why is that different than what we do in Korea? We're going through global training. And I remember walking into a rookie class one time, and one player raised their hand and said, "Hey, Kamish, did any other tour have to deal with this? Is that just because we're so global?" And I said, if you guys weren't professional golfers and you took a job tomorrow with IBM, you'd be in the exact same class, because IBM's trying to learn out how to do a great meeting in China. They're trying to figure out how to expand their business in Germany. They're trying to figure out how to be more successful in Australia. So it's not a golf thing, it's a business thing. And the opportunities, both in selling our TV rights and for an individual athlete, these athletes are free to sign their own deals. And so if you looked at Paula Creamer's bag, I remember I got off a plane one time in Bangkok, and I was going out to a golf course where we were playing, and the billboards in Bangkok they're the size of 5 skyscrapers. And there's a picture of Paula Creamer, and she's the size of a 747. And I don't know what it says, because it's all written in a language I don't understand. She's got the big smile, the logo's on her arm. I'm like, I don't know what they paid her, but that's a great example of why we went into the tunnel. Because coming out of that, these athletes, no matter where they grew up, have fan followings, have company followings, and have sponsors from all over the world. It's a nice time to be a pro athlete.
You guys were really the first, certainly in golf, to be out there. I mean, PGA has, they have the mini tours all over. Right. They have a couple of events with the President's Cup that go into Asia, and Ryder Cup and British Open, et cetera. But you're the first group that's out there in golf, and one of the first that's out there internationally. We've seen over the past 3 or 4 years the boom of international sports coming to the U.S., right? I mean, soccer has just gone crazy here. Right. We saw rugby and cricket over the last couple of years. Can you forecast what might be out there in 5 years and 8 years and 10 years in terms of international opportunity, both for people who are going to be employees and for the state of sports in general?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you that I've said this many times. I mean, I've been in other commissioner panels, and I've learned how much money some other sports have spent to be global. If you know how much money the NBA or the NFL has spent to try to create interest worldwide for their TV rights and their business. I mean, I don't know how many times we're going to play an NFL game in London, but we're still not a whole lot of European interest in the NFL. And the NBA has spent millions upon millions of business, and so we'll sometimes get a question like, "How'd you guys do it?" And to be honest with you, we don't know. Sometimes you get stupid lucky and you figure it out your way. And as I said, we made a ton of mistakes along the way. I mean, if you were going to do a case study on LPGA going global, every chapter would be about another mistake. But those are because we didn't have anybody to follow. There wasn't anybody we could say, "They've got it." That nobody had really kind of led us on the way. And now I think a lot of people are using us as an example. But back to your point about what you can forecast is, today when I go to my hotel room in Singapore, I can watch the same Premier League soccer game or football game in Singapore that I can watch in India, that I can watch in London, that I can watch in the U.S. And now, in most cases, I can watch them live in all of those countries. Even when I took this job 6 years ago, that wasn't the case. In Singapore, I watched professional badmintons on TV, And in Europe, you watched Premier League, and here you watch the NFL. Everybody had their regional sport. And sports are becoming borderless. And quite frankly, some of the sports that we think are the biggest and the strongest in the U.S. are the ones with the biggest borders around them. I mean, we can call it a World Series, but the world's not playing. We're not really involving the world in the World Series. And so that's really what's different. And we're really trying to embrace it. We just launched a new tournament called the International Crown. And we did it because golf's entering the Olympics in 2016 after a 100-year break. And one of the reasons golf's Olympics is interesting is because we're from all over the world. We'll have 35 different countries in the Olympics. But we thought, the Olympics will be cool, but it's really going to be 4 days, stroke play. It'll be like a regular tournament. So we decided we're going to create an event where only 8 countries can make it in. And so what we did is we said at the end of the season, we're going to take the best 4 female golfers from every country in the world. And we're going to take those 4 players' world rankings. We'll add those rankings together, and your country will get a rank. So your country rank is based on your best 4 players. And the best 8 ranked countries in the world get into the event every other year. And then those countries will play each other for what we call the crowning the best female golfing country in the world. Other sports love the concept, but they couldn't do it. I mean, if the PGA Tour wanted to do that, they'd have to have 7 tours get involved and all organize their schedule. I don't need another tour because those players are playing on the LPGA.
It would seem to me that all of those different international initiatives, going back to media, also tie into media, right? You talked about what you could see on television. I would think that the opportunities in terms of digital media and social media and the ability to connect globally through those platforms is wide open for you. What kind of initiatives do you want to explore both globally and domestically.
Yeah, I would say that we're definitely in the golf space anyway, trying to push the envelope on social media. You know, on the back of, golf's a pretty old and staid sport sometimes. On the back of the bib, it says Pedersen, for Suzanne Pedersen. Well, now in the LPGA, underneath Pedersen, it says her Twitter handle. If you went on our website today and you wanted to look up Natalie Gulbis, which some of you may have done, you look up Natalie Gulbis, and next to Natalie's name and picture and bio is her Facebook page, her Twitter handle, her Instagram. We want you to follow our athletes. I've had other executives in other sports go, why wouldn't you just put @LPGA? Don't you want them following the LPGA? And I said, I learned long ago that fans don't really care about the entity or the league. I mean, we get fired up about that, but nobody wants to follow the commissioner. They want to follow the athletes. Right. And if they follow the athletes, they follow our league because this is where they play. So we try to make it really easy to connect with them socially. The other thing is, I've got young, social, female, fun. They're posting crazy stuff. And we just had a player that just posted a video that she made in her hotel room during an event we had in Prattville, Alabama last week. And we have a big event called the Solheim Cup, and she created a music video tied to the music of Red Solo Cup to our Solheim Cup. And some of it borderline editable by the commissioner, but she posted. All of a sudden, there's hundreds of thousands of people firing it back and forth. Our job is to accelerate that, not get in the way of that. And so I want people to follow our athletes and not worry about whether or not they're following the LPGA. I think if you read the paper a lot between, NFL, finding its players, countering suit back to the NFL, you hear that about the LPGA. I mean, on my board, I report to 6 players. So of my 15-person board, 6 of them are athletes. We want our athletes to feel like they own the LPGA. They don't participate in the LPGA.
We're going to get to some of your questions here in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you one that I think is really important, because here is this really interesting company that's on the cutting edge, right, in terms of wanting to explore things with social and digital media, and that is very well established internationally. And maybe the neatest thing about them is that they're right here in Daytona Beach. So you guys have been there for, 25 years? That's been the headquarters?
Yeah, that's right.
What are the advantages of being in Central Florida on the coast there? And do you foresee that being the headquarters for the foreseeable future? Yeah,
the advantages are pretty clear. Obviously, we're in the golf business, and being around the golf business is key. And Florida is one of the few states that never stops golfing. Yeah. Because our players really come from all over the world, most of them move here as a U.S. base. I always say we're different from tennis. Tennis is a bit more nomadic. They play all over the world, but they just play all over the world. So most tennis players, no matter where they grew up, that's where they live now. If you live in Monte Carlo, if you live in the UK, if you live in the States, you just fly to events and you come home. I always say we want to be a lot like a lot of companies that sponsor us. We want to have a headquarter and a home, but we want to play around the world. I mean, we do business with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They're based in Chicago. They do business around the world. We do business with HSBC Bank or Evian Water. They have a home, but they sell the product all around the world. We're based in the U.S. We play 65% of our tournaments in North America. So our players move here. I would tell you that of the players that move here, probably 50 to 60% pick Orlando. It's all year round. It's got an airport. It's all about airports for us. No state tax for people that make pretty good money. And since most of our athletes then end up being in this area, it's good for our headquarters to be here for us to stay connected. Also, I'm selling multi-million-dollar deals over long, multi-year deals to people. And when you say to the to the CEO of Kia, why don't you come out to Central Florida in November? We'll kick this idea around. We'll play a couple rounds of golf. That's a lot better than saying, why don't you come out to Minneapolis? Right. We'll talk about this. So I find it's a lot easier to get our partners to come and see us in the wintertime and have some fun with it.
It's all about the palm trees.
It's all about the palm trees.
Okay, so let's take some questions. I hope some of you have some. We'll get to yours in just a minute. We have a microphone coming around, yes? Right there. And Bristol will have some questions from online. Okay, in time we will, but for now we've got the room, and we'll start right here.
Once again, thanks for coming to talk to us. Really appreciate it. So I guess my question is, with the growth of women's sports in the past year or so, with people like Ronda Rousey, Michelle Wie, Danica Patrick, do you ever see, with the growth of the PGA Tour as well, would you ever see like a crossover event between PGA and LPGA, or is that something that's kind of stretches the limit?
No, it doesn't stretch the limit at all. In fact, I've talked to Tim Fincham, who's my counterpart at the PGA Tour, for a few years about the idea. The good news on the PGA Tour side is they built this wraparound season recently, so they literally never stop. There used to be an off season. My players are big on having an off season, so we'd have a 2-month off season, and that's usually when those events come in. The challenge with any kind of team event in my sport is you're based on your official money. I can't give you official money for if you partner with him and you guys as a team have a score. I can't give you official money because maybe he had the good day and not you. So it becomes an unofficial event. In the world of golf, unofficial events have been harder and harder to secure because if you're Jordan Spieth or you're Paula Creamer, and you're looking to take 7 or 8 weeks off this year, you'll probably skip ones where your money's not official. So that's when we're going to have to find a location and an opportunity that's compelling enough to be able to put the two together. There's interest both on the men's side and the women's side for a joint event. The Olympics will be cool because we'll be playing in Rio kind of right back to back. They finish on one day, we start practicing the next. We did a back-to-back U.S. Open last year in Pinehurst where the men played, and then the next day we started our event and had incredible ratings for us. We were up 70% versus a typical U.S. Women's Open. So yeah, definitely within the realm, definitely doable. The challenges are really schedule and figuring out how to get enough official money to make sure the top players want to come. If you're a sponsor, you love the idea, but you love the idea a lot more if the top 20 men and women are going to show up.
There was briefly an event, the 3-Tour Challenge, where you had a men's player, a women's player, and a senior player played as a team against other teams. But that's gone now, right? Correct?
That was J.C. Penney in Texas.
Yeah. Other questions in here? Right here? Oh, we'll go back there. Okay, that's we'll go back there. We'll go back there. Thanks.
Is it on? Hi, thanks again for coming to speak with us. I have a question about content marketing. Do you think copywriting in a more direct sort of social media environment still has a place? Do you think it's still as relevant as, say, an athlete speaking directly to their crowd, or is it similarly effective for somebody else to write out what they want to say?
You mean, so is your question whether or not there's still room for content marketing in social media?
No, still room for copywriting within content marketing.
Yeah, although I think there's a lot of leagues in sports that are still trying to hold on to that. And I think in social media, if you have a plan to hold on to something, it's just going to end badly. So I think the quicker you sort of get over it and let them go, the better. We definitely have some of our own shows, that we can put our own stamp on, and our players will actually help tweet out. But if you think about yourselves as a fan, you'll watch that. But what's really cool, we had Michelle Wee one time did a lip sync video to some artist who, I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of before, but clearly everybody in the plane knew. We had a charter flight going from one place to another, and she produced this lip sync video where everybody in the, it's that song where you say, you got to put your hands up, and I forget how it goes, but everybody in the plane goes, hands up, and they're on a charter flight, flying between two things. She posts it when she lands, and some leagues, I think, would have said, geez, they said LPGA in there a bunch of times. They said a bunch of things that we own. You can't do that, and we just retweeted the crap out of that. Because as far as I'm concerned, it'd be hard to be a fan and not look at it and go, they're having fun. Those kids are enjoying themselves. LPGA looks like it'd be a fun place to hang. And, if as our fans, when we walk into a city, you guys know as fans yourselves and ticket buyers, a lot of things you can do with your money. And if the LPGA isn't cool, then you're not going to go there. I always say, we have to put up yellow ropes in the LPGA. We just want to make them harder to see. If you screamed at Christina Kim if she was walking down the fairway, I promise you she'd turn and scream back at you. And I love that. Because I think that's fun. We do something with our athletes, a little off your question, but we're the only league in the world that when an athlete signs up to play at an event, the first thing she gets from us is what we call a customer profile sheet. It's a 5x7 card, and on the top it says, what are the 3 things we need you to do this week? And those are in red. We're talking to the athletes now, the people that are playing in the event. It says, so let's just say that the sponsor is ANA Airlines. What does ANA want you to say when there's a microphone in your face this week? It says what to tweet in Facebook and Instagram. And I always say, you're going to tweet in Facebook 1 million times this week. These 5 things get into your daily routine because ANA wants you to tweet these things. We show a picture of the most important people that will be there that week. Your job as an athlete is find those faces and thank them. We send them an address and where they send their thank you letter. I want our athletes to know who's writing the check. Because if it's not for the check writer, they're home playing in a member guest for a putter. But because the check writers there, they're playing for $3 million in 170 countries watching them. And I always say, nobody's telling Derek Jeter, probably a bad analogy now, but nobody says to LeBron James when he shows up for a game, there's a new bank who signed on, and they're up in Suite 5. And if you could at halftime just run up there and high-five them. And when you say that, people, they kind of laugh like, yeah, that would never happen. I can't believe that doesn't happen, because he's not getting paid $30 million a year just because of TV rights. And so I always say to players, if you like getting a cardboard check from me on Sunday that's for more money than you ever thought you'd get playing, you can thank anybody when I hand you that check. You can thank your mom, your dad, your caddy, Jesus Christ. But the first person you thank is look down and see the name who signed it. If it says Giles Morgan, HSBC Bank, first thing you say is, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Giles Morgan and HSBC Bank. And I think that's, if I could crystallize, again, nothing to do with your question, so I apologize, I got myself fired up. But nothing to do with your question, but I would tell you the number one reason the LPGA is succeeding is because if you're a check writer, if you're a sponsor, you would say nobody cares more about my money than the LPGA. And I don't mean we want your money, but nobody cares more about why I wrote the check. No other athletic group in the world would know your objective on why you signed up for us. I can promise you when the Jaguars take the field next Sunday, no athlete in the locker room will know why anybody who wrote a check to them wrote a check. But when we tee it up next week in France, every athlete can tell you about Evian. They'll tweet about them, they'll Facebook about them, they'll say the right things when they're interviewed, and they will thank Frank Rabou, the CEO, at some point that week. And Frank Rabou and Evian sponsors everything under the sun. So at the end of the week, Frank will walk up to me and go, there's no other athletes like you guys. That's how we grow. And luckily, the other sports have no interest in everything I just told you. And as long as they don't, the LPGA is going to be just fine.
So maybe not so much copywriting, but certainly there's room for branding.
Sorry, I should have answered your
question. Let's go right here.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Brandon Finnicle, entertainment business, and my question is a junkie for fixing damaged goods and everything in business, what leadership style do you approach your task with, and what leadership style do you come across as needed in business today?
I always tell people that whenever a leader starts telling you about their leadership style, put an asterisk next to it and ask somebody that works for them, because I'll tell you how great I am as a leader, but people who work for me might say he's an idiot, Mm-hmm. So, and trust them, because they're right? Because they're working for me. But I would tell you that I try to employ the same leadership style that attracts me. So when I talk about a lot of leash, I like to try to give a lot of leash. I like people who are going to make a lot of mistakes. I just had this conversation with a few new hires a couple months ago at lunch, and I said, be me for a second. I'm writing you a check every month to work here. If I write that check to you every month, and at the end of the year, we're really no different. I mean, I could have not written you a check for a month for 12 months because you're just doing what we've always done. Mm-hmm. Then if you're me, you have to drive home and sometimes go, I don't know if I need to keep writing him that check. I don't care if you're the receptionist or if you're an executive leader or if you're somebody pounding in steaks at our tournament. Take a chance and make a difference in the company. And that doesn't always have to mean the difference is good. Create a thumbprint, make a difference, push the envelope. And when some boss says to you, that's not how we do things here, say, geez, I was under the impression you hired me to try to do things better, not just how we always did them. And I can promise you for 90% of bosses, that shuts them down. For 10%, that gets you fired. And quite frankly, I've said to me, what I realized in my life is firing didn't kill me. And if I got fired tomorrow, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep. Because at the end of the day, I know I'm doing what's right. And if my group of my leaders doesn't want that, I got to go find the home that does. So I believe in you hire talented people. Together, you decide what the future looks like. And then you got to give them enough money and leash to deliver it. And if they can't, find somebody else. Because if you give them enough money and enough leash and they're talented, and you gave them the room, I always tell people that work for me, you guys have the same responsibility I do. I go to my board and I say, as commissioner, here's where I'm going to take you in the next 3 years. And they can either say yes or no or make it harder or lighter. And I needed a freedom to hire my own people and enough money to get it done. And if I do all those things, stay out of my way. And if I don't, find a new commissioner. So that's my world. I mean, that's what it's like when you work for a board. That's what I need to make it work for my people, too. I want people who come in and are going to love that environment. And not everybody does. Some people want a cubicle and know that if they answer 112 emails a day, that's an accomplishment. I'd rather have 112 emails go unanswered and have somebody really push the envelope. So for me, it's about leash. It's about making mistakes. And it's feeling like if I'm writing you a check this month, it's because you made us better in some way. Mm-hmm. And really, that's what business has got to be about. I mean, I think businesses that don't have that mentality are places that aren't going to be able to write you a check long term, because they're going to get passed by companies that are thinking that way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Kelly, does that work for you? Does it work? Okay. I mean, what's she going to say, right? But
Right, yeah.
it
We'll
works.
edit her
It
out if she
definitely
says
works.
something different.
We do have a question online, Bristol.
Yes. Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
I have a question from online attendee Joe, and he wants to know what areas of the United States would you like to see the LPGA tour? Maybe some new areas of the country.
It's a great question. I always say this. I mean, on my Twitter following, I would say the top 3 things I get beyond commissioner's an idiot, which is usually number 1. But 2 or 3 is, why don't you play in such and such hometown? Or why did you leave such and such hometown? It was so good. And I said, whether fans like to hear it or not, I don't sit in my office and circle Salt Lake City and go, that would be good. I mean, there isn't a market I don't want to play in the LPGA. I'm way too greedy and selfish. I mean, I'll take any market. So the deal for me is, if I'm going to be about the check writer, I play where it works for the check writer's business. I went to meet with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange because I wanted to play in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I thought, let me get home every once in a while. And Chicago Mercantile Exchange said the best thing you could do for our business is connect your event to our conference that we have in Naples every year. So I flew up to Chicago to get an event in Florida. But that's how it works. I went to meet HSBC Bank because I wanted an event in London. The best part for their business was to have that event in Singapore. So we have an event in Singapore. So every time I think I know where I'm targeting in terms of a location, it goes away. Because if I want to have an event long term, it's got to work at HSBC's board meeting, not in Mike Whan's board meeting. So would Mike Whan want to play an event in Daytona or Orlando? I would. I'd like to drive home once for an event. I don't have a sponsor who says to me, Orlando's critical for my business. But I went to meet with Kia in Korea, and they told me they needed an event in California. So every time you think you got it figured out. So a lot of markets I'd like to be in, but it's almost futile for me to sit around and go, let's get to that market. I got to find check writers and then play where it works for their business.
Was that hard to give up some of the markets that had been the backbone of the tour and for most of its existence prior to the last 10 years? And I'm thinking of, Corning and Rochester and some of the smaller events.
Yeah, it's, I would say when you lose an event, it's tough regardless. But I always tell players, I have yet to meet a CEO who woke up in the morning, was driving to work and said, gosh, if I just had a golf tournament, then it would all work. Then the business would take off. So we're not needed. We're like owning a boat, right? I mean, you want it. It sounds good. I just don't know if I want to pay for a boat. And so we aren't core to somebody's business. So when you get a CEO change, if somebody's stock price tanks, if they have a business challenge, you can lose that business. We've really tried hard. Like in my time, we've gotten back to Toledo, which was an event we'd been in a long time. We're back to Portland. We're back to Hawaii. But we lost Rochester. We lost Corning. And those are tough. Tough only because I've become really good friends with these check writers. But most importantly, if you knew the LPGA, you'd know that half of our players, and in some cases up to 80% of our players, stay in homes when we come and play. So when we went to Rochester, I was the only guy waiting in the rental car line. Everybody else was getting picked up in SUVs and minivans, talking about the block party and are you going to the concert Thursday night? I'm thinking I'm the lonely guy driving to the hotel because they've been staying in the same homes for years. We had an off week 2 years ago. One of our players flew back to Portland to go trick-or-treating with the family. I said, you're going to Portland? She goes, I've been staying with them for 10 years and now the kids are trick-or-treating age and it just seems like I should be there on Halloween. That's what happens when we play in a marketplace. When we leave, that's the toughest part about the loss. But unfortunately, check writers decide where we play and how long we play there.
And that's a unique thing. I mean, no other league has that. No other tour has that.
No, they don't.
Yeah. Other questions? Right here, down in front. Making our microphone people work and run here. They're good though. They're quick.
Just getting their cardio.
So you mentioned that right at the beginning, you said the LGPA is, it's global, it's growing, and it's young. And you also mentioned that the average winner of a tournament is around 24. So what sort of things are you doing with your marketing strategy in the LPGA to target that sort of younger audience, make sure you can keep that growth and keep it moving?
It's a great question. I think there's two things in terms of what are we doing internally, because at the end of the day, it's up to you if you want to keep standing. It's when you bring a 17-year-old into a business that plays in 17 countries, I mean, there's some natural fatherly instincts that come out in that world too. I mean, we play all over the world in a lot of different places. There's alcohol related in a lot of these pro-am parties and stuff we're part of. I mean, these people are generally playing with 45-year-old men in these pro-ams. And so I hate to say it, but all those things go through your mind. And we have former Secret Service agents as part of our security detail just to make sure these kids, if you will, are safe all over the world, not just here. So one of the things we do is rookie orientation for us would be like being a plebe in a fraternity. I mean, they have to go through rookie hours. And those rookie hours include spending time in our TV production booth. They got to know what it's like to produce an LPGA event, because when a reporter walks up to you as you're walking down the 18th fairway and you kind of do one of these to the camera, you need to understand what happens inside the booth when that happens and all the turnaround that goes on. You understand what happens and all the email feedback that starts firing in from the fans. And at 17, you probably don't think like that because your parents are telling you how great you are and your agent's telling you how much money you're going to make. You got to spend time with the rule official. You know, you got to a rule official walks up to an athlete and says, yeah, no, that's a penalty. And you can imagine how a 25-year-old athlete takes that feedback. And when you're 17 and you get, or 18 or 19 and you get to go with the rules official, you see that experience. Like I said, we do a lot of language training. We do a lot of inner training. As it relates to fan base pulled in, the good news or the bad news of golf is, the good news about golf is my fan following, my audience is older and it's wealthy. And I mean the good and the bad. The good is, I mean, if I talk to a bank or a luxury car company, investments company, annuities, they love my audience. I'm better than CNBC, I'm better than CNN, I'm better than any financial show on TV that you could ever have. The bad news is if you came to me and go, God, your athletes are great, they're 25-year-old women. How many 25-year-old women watch the LPGA? Well, if I did a little tour of your 25-year-old woman, I'll bet it'd be pretty low. Golf doesn't really draw that audience. So letting 17-year-olds be 17-year-olds is helping us expand. That's what I said. If I tried to control social media, if I tried to control Instagram or Pinterest or all the other stuff that goes on, 17-year-olds wouldn't follow 17-year-olds. And so I let that happen. But if I was being honest with you, our real audience is older and it's wealthy. And that's what we sell. That's why somebody might, if you're Kia, you spend a lot of money with the NBA to get the 25 to 39-year-old. You spend a lot of money with the LPGA to bring your top 50 customers together, have a customer experience, and talk to the people who are buying your $60,000 car.
Thank you.
You bet.
More questions? Here?
Hi, how you doing?
How you doing?
I actually have two questions for you. The first one is, you mentioned you had a board of athletes that you report to. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
You want to ask? I'll do that. So I work for a board of directors. I mean, I think any CEO or commissioner would. My board of CEO is made up of 15 people, myself, 7 athletes, 7 LPGA players. One of the 7 is a retired player voted on by the players to be their president, kind of the voice of the players. But if I walked into my board meeting, at least 6 of the athletes would have a glove hanging out of their back pocket, which I always think is cool. Or they're carrying in a wedge, you know, or something. 6 generally retired, successful business people that have led businesses that are related. We have the former head of NBC Sports, you know, on our board. I have a person who teaches sports law at Harvard on our board. So almost all of our legal issues he's lived or taught. And then we have the head of our teaching club professional division. We have 1,700 women that are LPGA members that teach the game, and their president sits on that board. So yeah, what's really unique about my board, and that's why I said it's very different when I'm in a commissioner panel and they start talking about most sports. The athletes have a union. And there's the league, and they negotiate. And you've heard the term about the contract, or they go on strike, because it's 2 entities talking to each other. It's GM talking to the plant people, right? The LPGA is not like that. We don't have a union of players. Players sit on our board. So reason unions usually form is because the players don't feel like they have any influence on the league. In my case, I report to players, so not only do they have influence, they can fire me. Which is pretty good influence. So it's interesting. When we sit in our board meetings, we talk about things that are really specific to being a player on tour. We talk about our traveling daycare. I mean, you probably wouldn't think about this with a male athlete forum, but we actually have a traveling daycare center. So if you're 23 and you decide to have kids and you're a phenomenal athlete, I don't want to lose you. And the NBA doesn't worry about that, but the LPGA does. So we have a daycare center that packs up on a semi and rolls to the next, and we talk about daycare. We travel with our own physiotherapists, because if you're hurting and you got back spasms, I want you to keep playing. You want to keep playing. So our boards are kind of unique. I always tell people that our boards would be a fun college project, just to sit in and go, they're actually talking about sports, you know. It's and I enjoy it. I mean, as a sports guy and as a golf background person, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, our athletes, they elect they're what they're called player directors. They're player directors who serve 3-year terms, and it's a term limit. They have to get off the board after that. So we're always rotating new players in, and so the players are involved in the most strategic decisions. Where we spend our money is decided in large detail by player directors.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm happy that you brought up some of those points, speaking about, the difference between the LPGA and, NBA and all that stuff. Going into my next question, without sounding too political, I guess, have you as a commissioner, have you spoken with other commissioners from other female sports, especially with this day and age, being 2015, the women's World Cup in soccer, kind of
Right.
starting to boom, and, women's sports just kind of starting to take a real, its actual stance within the States and across, I guess, the world platform, you can say. Have you guys, as commissioners, actually had any conversation about, where you're trying to take, women's sports and, how to make it something, taking it to the level that, men's sports is, where it's at?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the answer is yes. We find ourselves a lot of times in the same speaking panels or at, similar conferences. So, just recently I was doing an ESPN speaking engagement in San Diego, and I looked on the agenda, and Stacey Alliser, who's the head of the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, was speaking right before me. So she was like 9 to 10, and I was 10:15 to 11:15. And I thought, oh gosh, she's going to talk about global women sports television. It's going to be all said by the time I get up there. It's kind of funny. She get up and gave a speech that was completely different than mine, and we both kind of looked at each other and said, lunch? And I said, yes. So I said, because everything you said, what she said, was interesting to me because it's different. She talked all about the fans, and as you guys probably guessed, I talked a lot about check riders, and we both realized there was something we could gain from each other. We both had some of our own athletes in the audience that found it interesting and coming back and forth. So yeah, I've talked to folks at the WNBA for sure. Haven't had a lot of conversations with FIFA currently. It's probably a good one for me to stay away from on the Women's World Cup until things settle down there. But yeah, we do share a lot of. We have very different audiences generally. Like WNBA targets a whole different audience than what golf. But a lot of the same athlete challenges. And half of my business is making creating an environment where the best athletes believe this is the best place to play. Because my athletes aren't in a union. If they think playing in Japan is better, they can go play in the Japanese LPGA, or they can go play in Korea, or they can play in Europe, or the Europeans or Japanese or Korean will stop coming here. And a lot of my U.S. fans will go, yeah, that'd be great if the Korean players stopped coming. It'd be terrible if they stopped coming because my TV rights in Korea are through the roof because their best female athletes in the country of Korea, your best female athletes are golfers who play on the LPGA. So every young family in Korea wants to watch in fact, in Korea, I don't know why I got caught on Korea, but if you ask people in Korea what the men in Korea sport they're most interested in watching, LPGA will score 25%. The Masters will score like 17%. The men's U.S. Open will score. So it just tells you when you have these athletes from all over the world that the interest level is, our TV ratings are up 50% this year alone in Korea. So it's, yeah, my job is to create a sports environment where the best want to come, and I can learn a lot from other commissioners on that topic.
To that end, Mike, you've got a developmental tour, the Symetra Tour, which has a lot of events here in Florida, and in particular in Central Florida. Can you talk about what that tour looks like?
Yeah, so we have, at the LPGA, we essentially own 3 things: tours, what we call the TNCP, Teaching Club Professionals, and then our foundation work, which is essentially a program we run with the USGA called Girls Golf, United States Golf Association. In tours, we own the LPGA Tour and we own the Symetra Tour, which is, Symetra is a financial company out of Seattle that has bought the title rights to that tour. So the Symetra Tour is essentially the stage below. It's AAA, if you will, for golfers. So typically you'll come and try to make it on the LPGA Tour. If you don't make it on the LPGA Tour, you can certainly, and most of them do, make it on the Symetra Tour. Symetra Tour has 22 events. I think this year they'll have 25 events, and that'll be our cap next year. So think of it, they play a 25 tour schedule. At the end of that schedule, the top 10 money winners go directly into the LPGA next year. And then the next 10, did I say 20? Top 10 go directly into the LPGA. And then the next 10, 11 through 20, can go directly to the last stage of our qualifying school. Our qualifying school is 3 stages, and it's grueling and it's expensive. So if you finish in the top 20 on Symetra, you can go right to the end and compete against the best of the best in one 5-day event to get on the LPGA. So most will go there to stay competitive, to stay sharp, to improve their game, but most importantly, they're there because they want to make it till the LPGA. For us, the reason we own and run that tour is because I don't want to wait until you're on the LPGA to teach you to train you on media, to train you on how to hire and fire a caddy, to deal with a nightmare parent, trust me, we have a few of those, to deal with hiring, firing agents, to understand the rules of golf in a way that's, second to none, to understand sponsors, to host a pro-am. We do all that training on the Symetra Tour. And we really start training heavily once you start to become a top 30 player, because now it looks like you're going to join us on the LPGA Tour. So we use that tour as an incredible development ground. The players would say it's a playing development ground. The commissioner would say it's an incredible preparation to become a pro athlete, because once you jump to the LPGA and you have your first good round and you sit in a meeting like this and all you people are media writers, people start firing questions at you. If that's your first time and you're an LPGA player, it's too late.
Yeah.
So we do mock media interviews. We do the same thing my staff does to me. We'll do a mock conference where it's a negative. Somebody thinks you cheated, and we start firing questions at you. Now you haven't, but I can tell you when they start firing questions at you, you think you have. And it's fun to watch these young women develop not only on the golf course, but as professionals. They're ready when they get to the LPGA.
More questions from out here? I've got a couple to finish us off. Okay, so in spite of the fact that you said you don't like saying where things are going to be in 5 years, if you could envision where the tour is in 5 years, how would you define that as success in that way?
You're right. I don't really have a good answer for where it'll be in 5 years, but I can tell you what's on my, literally on my nightstand and on the little mirror in my bathroom, which is kind of weird, where I shave every morning. I always put 10 things at the beginning of the year I want to see. The challenge with the LPGA today is we're generally a niche sport. We live generally on the Golf Channel. So unless you own the Golf Channel as part of your sports package, or you know where channel 1154 is on your dial, you don't stumble into us very often. We only play on, when I joined the tour in 2010, we had one event on network TV. Today we have 6, I think. But my goal really is to make sure the LPGA is playing on network TV once a month. I want to live on the Golf Channel, just like in the LPGA, I want to be based in North America. But I need to make sure that fans stumble into us regularly. And I think when fans stumble into you regularly, you have a chance to bring them back and become more fans. And I would say there's a lot of people, the first time they see Stacey Lewis, they don't like her as a golfer. They think she's athletic, she's funny. The sport's tough, she's a grinder. All the things that you can relate to in your own life, because you got to do all those things to make it in business. And so I just need to make sure more of the general fan can find the way. One of the reasons that we were so proactive in pushing golf in the Olympics is the Olympics will give us a viewership window we've never had. And I always say, I love the Olympics, and you guys probably already got that, but I remember being like a 10-year-old kid. This is way past you guys, bedtime or age, but I remember Olga Korbut from Russia was a female gymnast. So I like watching women's gymnastics, but I can watch it one time every 4 years. So after it's over, or volleyball or swimming, pick your athletic sport in the Olympics. Once Michael Phelps is over, other than Subway commercials, you see him 4 years from now. And so to me, what I like about being in the Olympics is if you come on in the Olympics and you watch women play golf and you say, wow, that Anna Nordqvist is a heck of a player, and I didn't know she was from Sweden, and that somebody, Arthur Munoz is from Spain, and you like what you see, we're on next week and for the next 35 weeks. So different from most Olympic sports. If you like kayaking, enjoy those 2 days, because it's over for the next 4 years. If you get caught off guard in the Olympics and go, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't get women's golf was that young, fun, global, energetic. You can watch us for the rest of the year, for the next 4 years until we're back. Most Olympic sports don't have that opportunity. That's why it's exciting to me.
And then there's your personal 5-year plan, right? You just re-signed. Why did you want to come back and do more? What was unfinished? And how would you define success for you 5 years from now?
Yeah, so when I originally signed on to the LPGA, I said I was going to do it for 4 years. And I've said that every place I've been, including places I've been for 10 years, because I just like to think in 4-year windows. At the end of the day, if I haven't done much in 4 years, I should move on, because I'm not as capable as I thought I was, and you should kick me out. And so I always kind of say that to my board, which is, let's just deal small year windows. But we got to the end of this period, and the board was saying, we love where we are, and we want you to stay. And I said, well, I hate where we are, and that's why I'll stay. And I don't mean hate in a bad way, but I don't want to be known as the commissioner or the team that took us from 22 tournaments to 32 tournaments, or from 15 countries watching us to 170. Those are nice. I want to be the commissioner that made the LPGA primetime sports, to be in the relative sports discussion. If you're out there standing in the hallway and you're talking about sports last night, I want the LPGA to be part of that dialogue, and we're not today, and we should be. Our athletes, I've said this many times, you went into a player meeting, you'd look around and go, my gosh, every one of these ladies could have been an Olympic athlete in anything else. It's just that athletic, and so I feel like for me to be done. We've got to be better than a good golf story. We've got to be a good sports story. We're making good money now, and we got a lot of good TV rights, but I still don't think if you're a young woman who makes it, and you're one of the best 50 golfers on the planet. I mean, imagine being one of the best 50 of something on the planet. I'll never be that, but these athletes I'm working with are. Their opportunity should be 10 times better than it is. I mean, right now, if Jordan Spieth wins this Sunday, he'll make more money probably today than my athletes will make in the next 9 months. It's not a man versus woman thing. It's just that opportunity exists. And since it exists, I got to go grab it for my players.
Okay, so as we look back, one final thought here. You've been in this business now for 30 years, and you've clearly articulated why you want to be in it for longer. Put yourself back, looking at these guys starting out, as you started out 30 years ago. What would you say to them about a career in sports?
Well, I mean, if you can at some point in your career find the thing you're passionate about and drive to work and open up your emails and realize that every subject heading is the same thing you're passionate about, don't worry about how much money you make. Don't worry about what your title is. Don't worry about how crappy your cubicle is. All those things will take care of themselves in time. Nothing was glamorous about Mike Whan at 25. I'm not saying it's any glamorous at 50, but it took me a while, and I'm not sure that was a good or a bad thing, to realize that, I used to work at Crest toothpaste, and as my wife would say, we would go into a dinner party, please don't talk about tartar control tonight. And because if you met Mike Whan at 25, I was pretty passionate about gum health. I don't know why, and I remember thinking to myself, I spend an awful lot of time worrying about teeth and gums, and do I care about teeth and gums? Of course, but is this really what I want to, when I'm 60 and it's over, I want to say, I controlled more tartar than anybody in my career. And so it hit me after a while that I can get passionate about anything. If tomorrow I had to sell 2x4s, I promise you I could get excited about selling 2x4s. But in a perfect world, in a really perfect world, if I could put something that I really love and feel like matters together with, my passion for business, then I know I'm onto something. And the first time I left Procter & Gamble to do that, company wasn't great. Like I said, I got fired in 2 years, so you can imagine how much they loved me. And the experience, wasn't great, and my wife wasn't sure about this, and my parents were thinking, how can you leave Procter & Gamble? That's the greatest job in the world. So everybody was telling me why it was wrong. And I remember, half of me was, I'm going to prove them wrong over the course of it. But I would tell you that the three things I tell everybody: stop worrying about the first job. The first job doesn't matter, and it won't matter. Get a job, get started. And who cares if you lose it? Just get a job, get started. Don't worry so much about what your title is or where your office is or what the company name is. Look for leash, look for room to run, and be willing to make a real difference, even if your boss is trying to put you back in the box. Because I think the sooner in your life you realize that a difference maker is who I am, the greater your chances of what you want to be at 55 become a reality. And they'll have a lot of people in your life talk you out of that. A lot of bosses, a lot of parents, a lot of peers. Like, you can't do that here. We don't do that at this guy. You're going to get yourself fired. And I would just tell you that mentality, the earlier you can get it, and say, hey, they're paying me a check to make a difference here. I mean, my job is to make sure they look at my salary and go, he or she's worth more than that. The sooner you can grasp that and figure that out, the faster you'll blow by all your peers, even if it has to be somewhere else. And it's a weird mindset, and I just find that in business, especially today, more so in America than the companies I go around the world, we're trying to teach people how to do a job as opposed to, I hired you because I have work to do. How you do it I could learn a lot from. And I always say, we're pretty young at the LPGA because I can learn a lot more from a young person than I can from somebody my age who's already thinks they've figured it out. So be free, man. Don't and firing never hurt anybody. It just embarrasses your parents for about 3 weeks, and then you find another gig. I mean, I will kill my kids when they get fired, but secretly I'll go, you go get them, because I want them to be able to be risk takers. I want them to try to push the envelope. I want them to make more money because they're worth it, not because they've been there 14 years and a 2% increase for 14 years, they're finally making a good salary. Make more money because you can walk into your boss and go, let's face it, I'm better than my peers and you know it. And when you feel like you can say that and you're not BSing, your career will take off pretty quickly.
And if you can say it with a big, sparkly, bright, toothy smile,
tartar-free.
Because you use tartar-free Crest toothpaste, that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a big hand for Mike Whan?
Thank you.
Thank you. Great stuff.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Guys, thank you guys for your attendance and for your questions, and we will see you at the next campus conversation in 4 weeks.
Thank you, guys.